Hello. Francis, give me an indication if you can hear me. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, madam, we can hear you very well, very clear, beautiful voice.
Thank you so much. It's 2 o'clock my time. We are just about to start. Just give me a moment. I want to share my screen. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining the National Dialogue for Namibia, where we are part of, the preparations of the UN Food System Summit that is upcoming. I am Samalani Ngwenya. I'm a lecturer from the University of Free State, and I'm saying hello to all of you all the way from South Africa. Will be your host today. Without any waste of time, you can follow us on social media, and wherever you're joining us from, you can say hello and welcome to this session. Let me take you through our program overview for today. We're gonna have an opening session where we're gonna hear the background and we get the opening remarks. Secondly, we are going to have a number of a presentation, a keynote address, and a lead paper, all talking about the analysis of key drivers affecting agriculture and food systems in Namibia. And we're going to have 2 rounds of discussions where we're going to hear from different perspectives on how things are happening in Namibia, but we are also going to take questions, and we're going to have some discussions. We are also going to have a summary of all the discussions that we are having today, plus some recommendations for considerations, and we'll be having some closing remarks. Let me see if you are able to see me there. Hello, I'm joining you from Pretoria, South Africa. Without any waste of time, I'm going to call, maybe let me see. We will be going through the first session, which is the background and opening. We are going to do it in 2 ways. Firstly, we will hear why are we having these national dialogues and regional dialogues. That is going to be presented by Professor Adipala Ekwamu. Secondly, we are in Namibia, virtually of course, but we're going to get some opening remarks and the word of welcome from Mr. Percy Misika, who is the Executive Secretary from the Ministry of Agriculture, Water, and Land Reform. Ladies and gentlemen, without any waste of time, I'm sure you are waiting patiently to hear all about this UN Food System Summit 2021. Without any waste of time, I'm going to call none other than Professor Adipala Ekwamu. I'm not going to spend a bit of time reading his bio, but one thing for sure, he is actually the Executive Secretary for ReForum. That is the regional forum for capacity building in agriculture, which is a network of over 129 universities in 38 African countries. Professor Adipala, why are we here? Over to you.
Our moderator, I hope you can also see me now.
I can.
This is lovely, lovely seeing you, lovely seeing, seeing that we have a number of colleagues from Namibia and beyond that have joined us. Really, thank you very, very much. I think, let me share my slide, then I will make the remarks.
Yes. While he's preparing his slides, should you have any questions, you can go to the Q&A chat box and ask your questions there. We're going to have dedicated time to take any questions that we will be having. And I would also like to encourage my speakers to also go to that Q&A chat and look at some of the questions that are emerging and respond to them as we go along. Over to you, Prof.
No, thank you, Madam Moderator. Colleagues from Namibia, colleagues from Southern Africa, colleagues from various parts of Africa, all of us here and there, welcome to these Namibia National Consultations. It is indeed a very great honor for ReForum to be part of this dialogue. And I want to appreciate at the onset the colleagues from both the Ministries of Agriculture and the Ministry of Higher Education and various other institutions in Namibia who have partnered to organize this event. As our moderator mentioned, this is part of some of the global dialogue platforms that ReForum is organizing across Africa and globally. But before going far, I propose to do 3 things. One, I know that some people don't know about ReForum. I would like to briefly introduce ReForum. Secondly, I would like to spend time focusing on why we're here as raised by our moderator. Then third, I would like us to focus on what are some of the expectations, what are we expecting out of our today's meeting and other dialogues that Namibia as a country will be holding. Ladies and gentlemen, ReForum is a network of African universities. It was originally constituted in 2004 by 10 African vice chancellors in response to the launch by the African heads of states of the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, an initiative to try to reduce poverty in Africa, to try to reduce hunger, and to try to reduce malnutrition in our continent. As African universities set up by our governments, it was imperative that we universities needed to reorganize ourselves to contribute to that bold agenda by our African heads of states and government. So in 2004, 10 vice chancellors came together and formed this platform, which they called Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building in Agriculture. The focus was to support agricultural development in the continent. But we have seen expanded, and we cover more than agriculture. We look at the broader issues of science, technology, and innovations, and other relevant fields. The idea, create a platform for universities to network, to work collaboratively together, to support resource mobilization for universities, and a platform where the universities as institutions could have a voice, a learning platform for reaching out to various actors, but also for enhancing transformation on the way universities do business. Importantly, the platform was set out to allow the universities to work collaboratively together to mobilize resources to support activities of universities. And third, and very key, was to provide that platform for training of quality graduates in Africa for Africa. The focus, training for Africa in Africa, in such a way that the graduates and the staff would work across the continent so that we're able to harness the capacities in various institutions across the continent, so that the graduates and scientists know the beauty, the challenges, and the opportunities across our continent. We wanted our students and faculty to know about what is happening in North Africa, what is the challenges and opportunities in West Africa. And if Ngwenya would allow, we wanted to know about the opportunities in Southern Africa, including in Pretoria. But also we wanted to know what are the issues, the challenges, what are those opportunities in Central Africa? And then coming back to Eastern Africa, what is there in East Africa? How could we support the people in Eastern Africa to strengthen the agriculture and food systems? That was the basis and the rationale for founding ReForum. As I mentioned, we started as 10 universities in 5 countries, basically in Eastern and Southern Africa, but we have expanded and we are now in 38 countries across the continent. We hope with time and depending on the demand from those other countries, that ReForum will expand its footprints across the entire continent. For Namibia, we have been with Namibia, I believe, since 2013, and we have undertaken some activities. As of now, it's only the University of Namibia, which is the member university of ReForum, although His Excellency, the President of Namibia, has challenged why there is only one university in Namibia that is a member of ReForum. The membership is based on the demand. It's up to the universities in Namibia to request for membership of ReForum. We have provided 3 grants to the tune of close to $450,000 to Namibia for activities in Namibia. We have also supported the training of 13 students, both at PhD and master's level. This number is small. We would like to grow it. We have also worked with especially the University of Namibia and other institutions in Namibia to support other skill enhancement training for the research community and for the university. In 2015, we were very honored and privileged to have one of the most beautiful meetings ReForum has ever had in Namibia. And as my friend Kitenge, I know she uses another name, mentioned, in the most clean city in Africa, in Windhoek. It was a great honor and pleasure together. And we are currently working with University of Namibia and others to support resource mobilization for work in Namibia. And we are also working to network the University of Namibia and other actors with other institutions across Africa. Allow me to use this opportunity to mention some thoughts that we as a secretariat have for Namibia. One, we would like to continue to strengthen our partner, to develop stronger partnerships for strengthening human capital development for universities in Namibia and for research institutions. We would like to grow our partnerships to strengthen academic programs in Namibian universities and also in TVET institutions. 3, and very important, we would like to strengthen the capacity and the roles of Namibian universities and research institutions in terms of the research to serve the demand needs in Namibia. 4th, we would like to join hands in terms of resource mobilization for activities in universities, TVET institution, and research institution in Namibia. 5th, as I mentioned, we had a beautiful time in 2015 in Namibia. And we are looking forward to coming back to Namibia in 2024 for the Africa-wide triennial conference on higher education and research in Africa. So colleagues in Namibia, we are looking forward to coming to Namibia in 2024, and we will hope to see even a more beautiful city in Namibia. Let's get back to the focus of this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, as a continent and globally, we are facing increased challenges of very many millions of people not able to have secure food, living in hunger, and with high incidence of malnutrition across the globe, but more glaringly within our continent. As such, the United Nations General Secretary General took note of this and decided to convene a global summit for heads of state to explore opportunities, how we can address the challenges of increased hunger, malnutrition, and more recently, the increasing incidence of climate variabilities and its impact. There are also other things that are affecting the sustainability of our food systems. So His Excellency wanted to know how best, what initiatives should we develop globally to respond to these new challenges. But it was very categorical that in whatever actions and initiative that we come up with, we should make sure it involves inclusivity in the actions, in the delivery of intervention. We should not leave anybody behind, as you saw in that documentary. We need to make sure the smallholder farmers are part of it. We need to make sure the youth are part of it, and all parts of the globe are part of this. Those were some of the rationales why the United Nations Secretary General convened for this year a global summit on strengthening food systems in the world. To do that, he set up a number of strategies. One is set up a global scientific committee to guide the deliberations and the actions to be implemented. He also worked with various actors across the globe and agreed on 5 key areas that globally we should explore on how best to strengthen. Third, he set up what he called a network of champions to mobilize global participation in the dialogue, so that the issues that come up to the United Nations is through a bottom-up approach. It's my honor and pleasure to mention that ReForum is one of those 100 institutions that the United Nations Secretary General has, tasked to mobilize global participation. That is why we are working with you people in Namibia to have these meetings. He set up that there should be a 3 routes for the dialogue. One under by the member of states, such as the one that we are holding in today for Namibia. The other one also dialogue at a global level. And then in addition, he allowed individual institutions and actors to also have independent dialogues. That is the area where ReForum comes in, but it is working today with the government of Namibia to hold Namibia National Dialogue. I mentioned about the 5 key track areas that we should be deliberating on, and I'm hoping that this will be discussed in this meeting. One definitely is to ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all. Basically, the focus trying to achieve zero hunger as part of attaining the Sustainable Development Goals. The other one is that we would review the modes and strengthen and have more sustainable consumption patterns in our countries. We need to deal especially with the reduction in food waste across various countries. We also need to look at how to make sure that we are working into a more sustainable environment, where we are looking at the environment health. We are looking at the issues of maintaining productivities of our natural environment, including soils. The fourth, and as I mentioned, the issue of inclusivity. How do we achieve inclusivity in the actions when we're in Namibia? How do we make sure that all parts of Namibia are benefiting from the intervention that the government of Namibia is coming up with? Last, how do we respond to some of these shocks and challenges that we are facing, such as from climate change? So those are some of the areas, and I'm hoping that these will be some of the focal areas of discussion during our deliberation today. So what has ReForum done? Or what is ReForum doing? One, as a network, we are encouraging African universities and other institutions to engage in a national, regional, continental, and global dialogue platforms, so that we have the voices from institutions in Africa that are picked up by our member states' government and communicated at the UN General Assembly. We are trying to specifically, like today, make sure our universities are engaging in the national dialogue. And I'm very grateful to see that the University of Namibia is actively participating in today's dialogue. We are also supporting regional dialogues, and our moderator, you kindly moderated the dialogue for Eastern and Southern Africa, where we brought in not only universities, but also research institutions, farmer organizations, business communities to discuss how best we can strengthen food systems in Africa. In addition, we are encouraging participation in other dialogue platforms, not only originating from Africa, but also from other parts. Importantly, ReForum is trying to make sure that universities in particular in this process of dialogue engage with policymakers. On 27th May of last month, we convened a meeting of technical experts from across Africa. They met and deliberated, they listened to what was coming from universities, and based on that, they made recommendations for consideration by African ministers for key actions. The African ministers met on 9th June of this month and deliberated on recommendations that came from the universities, the government technical expert, and was presented to the ministers. Arising out of that, the ministers adopted an African-wide ministerial communique to capture some of the issues that have come out of that dialogue. We still have 2 more convenings, one with a number of what we are calling key advocates for Africa's development. This will include our colleagues in FARA, which is the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. A number of selected African ministers will still be there. We will be having Monty Jones, the first African World Food Prize winner. He will be with us. We will also be having 1 or 2 former heads of states, including the former president of Mauritius. And then on 1st of July, with the support of the government and the president of Malawi, there will be what we are calling a pre-United Nations Food System Dialogue Summit for selected African heads of states. Colleagues in Namibia, we hope and pray that your own president participate in the dialogue on the 1st of July. So what is our expectation for today? We would like to hear from you about the current status and challenges and opportunities of facing the food systems in Namibia. We'd like to hear your own perspective on how to respond to those 5 tracks that the UN Secretary General has tasked us to address. Finally, we would like to hear from you what suggestions, what messages would you like the government, the president of Namibia, to present to the United Nations General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to listening and learning from your perspective. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Prof, even before you go, I see the question here from Ayola, who is asking, how do I become part of the Champion Network? And how do I contribute? I can feel, I can hear somebody willing to become part of the champions, and they also want to contribute. What could be your response to that?
Our moderator, that is beautiful. We are all champions in our own ways, starting from the communities where we come from, starting from the institution, starting from some of the dialogue that we are having today. We need to make sure to hear your perspective on what should we do to strengthen the food systems. But you need to be persistent. This is not going to happen once. You need to keep talking. But also, I will be honored to link with you and we work together to increase our voices across Africa. Thank you, our moderator.
Thank you so much. I will recommend that you go to the chat box if you have some links that you can share with him, respond there so that he can become a champion that we are looking for. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard what I've heard from Professor Adipala is that no one should be left behind. How do you contribute? Okay, I'm sharing my screen again. We are continuing with our program. At this point in time, I would like to call upon Mr. Pesi Musika, who is the Executive Director in Namibia Ministry of Agriculture, Water, and Forestry. He has a lot of experience. He has worked with the Food and Agriculture Organization. Mr. Musika, would like you to give your opening remarks as somebody who is in Namibia and give us your take. Over to you, sir.
Okay, I'm going to, first of all, my name is Mesa Mulunga. I'm the Director of Planning and Business Development in the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, Namibia. I would like to, on behalf of the Executive Director, extend his apologies. He really wanted to be part of this meeting, and that's how he had actually planned it. But he was assigned to some urgent matter that he had to go and attend to. And he requested me to kindly deliver his opening remarks as they are prepared. And I'm going to just read them verbatim. To start, it says, in our quote, Honorable Kale Schlatwine, in absentia, Professor Adipala Ekwamu, ReForum Executive Secretary, Dr. Klami Gwenya, our moderator, Dr. Alice Mwetwa, Deputy Executive Secretary, ReForum Secretariat, Mr. Mushokabanji Mulima, Chief Executive Officer, Meat Cooperation of Namibia, Mr. Gernot Pipmeyer, Manager, Policies, Programs, Development and Council Service, National Commission on Research, Science and Technology, Mr. Alpheus Siamba, Senior Manager, Markets, Business and Product Development, Agro Trade Agency, AMTA, Dr. Simon Angombe, Associate Dean, School of Agriculture and Fishery Sciences, FAENS, University of Namibia, Dr. Maria Yvonne Hemberger, Head of Department Paraclinical Science and Senior Lecturer, Veterinary Public Health, University of Namibia, Ntlantla Lupantla, Deputy Director, Innovation, Ministry of Higher Education, Technology and Innovation, Mr. Mesah Mulunga, Director, Planning and Business Development, Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, senior government officials, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasant honor to be given this opportunity to open pre-UN Food Systems National Dialogue for Namibia. As we are preparing for the 2021 Food Systems Summit as part of the Decade Action Plan to achieve Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Namibia is tasked with a daunting task to prepare for the upcoming UN Food Systems National Dialogue, which will provide a platform to share ideas and come up with solutions to our food system. We have established a task team and a technical task team to work towards the realization of food systems dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, pre-UN Food Systems National Dialogue for Namibia provides the opportunity to Namibian stakeholders to come together to take stock of the fragile food system of the country due to droughts, floods, and COVID-19 crisis. Namibia is part of the world food system, and we all must come together to bring about the transformation that is needed by Namibia. Hence, we will contribute to transformation that the world needs. When our food systems fail, the resulting disorder threatens our education, health, and economy, as well as human rights, peace, and security. And in so many cases, those who are already poor or marginalized are the most vulnerable and cannot cope. We all agree that transforming our food system is the way to make progress towards food sustainability. Moderator, bringing together key players from science, business, policy, and healthcare, government organizations, academia, as well as other key stakeholders, is a good endeavor towards a harmonized, tangible action plan for Namibian food system. It is therefore my pleasure and privilege to officially open this pre-UN Food Systems National Dialogue for Namibia, and I thank you. So, and that is at the end of the quote, and I so submit, Madam Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mulunga. Very much, thank you for representing Mr. Musika. One thing that I have picked from that opening statement, which was so powerful, is that, and this is what we are putting as a challenge, not only for Namibia, but for every other African country. We can't afford to let our food system fail. This is what I have picked from what you have said. We just can't afford to let our food systems fail. Then the question is, what do we do as a collective? And that is not a question for you, but I'm challenging everybody who's attending, but everybody in the sense that nobody should be left behind. Everybody has a role to play, and everybody can play a role in one way or another. Thank you very much. Extend our word of thanks to Mr. Musika to say thank you for welcoming us. I thank you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard we have been welcomed. It means that we are free to participate. If you have some questions, I want to see, the Q&A chat box really trending with questions and all that. Without any waste of time, we are going ahead with our program. At this point in time, we are going to listen to two presentations. So basically, we are starting to hear a bit about the analysis of the current, food systems in Namibia. What are some of, the key drivers of the agriculture and food systems in Namibia? We are going to hear on one hand a keynote paper, and we're gonna hear also a lead paper, and we're gonna take a bit of discussions there, and then we will proceed. And who is going to give us, the first, keynote paper? The first keynote paper, it's on the current status and issues affecting agriculture and food system in Namibia. It's going to be given to us by Dr. Maria Yvonne Herbinger. Should I say guten Tag, Dr. Herbinger? She is the head of department for paraclinical science and a senior lecturer in veterinary public health at the University of Namibia. I will say heartily welcome, Dr. Herbinger. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ngwena, and welcome everyone, ladies and gentlemen, for that nice words now. What I have done, firstly, can you hear me all?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, because we have sometimes problems with our connections, but it seems to be fine. So yes. I will share my presentation and then actually, hopefully then enhance the discussions for later. Just hang on. Okay, can everyone see?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Yes.
What I have to present, and that means, as I mentioned already, enhancing the discussions, the current status and the issues actually, which are affecting the agriculture and food systems in Namibia. So we have to get the priorities right. And the main expectation for the dialogue actually are to assess the country's food status, underlying challenges and opportunities, and provide recommendations towards the 5 action tracks of the UN Food System Summit, and provide suggestions of key messages to be communicated by the member state to the UN Food Safety Summit. Here I brought, because it was not on the invitations explained, actually the 5 action tracks for the Food System Summit in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. So I will not go deeper back. I assume everyone knows what the Sustainable Development Goals are. And I will just here mention the 5 action tracks. Number 1, ensuring access to safe and nutritious food for all, shifting to sustainable consumption patterns, boosting nature-positive production at sufficient scale, advancing equitable livelihoods and value distribution, and building resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stresses. I mean, we had now, you know, all our pandemic is on, so many of the things and many of the data which we still received in 2018 and even 2019 are not so valid anymore, and many things have changed drastically. But let's see. The 5 action tracks, which I mentioned now only briefly, have quite some key opportunities and challenges of food systems, and they relate to one or more food system components, but they do not define, I think that you realize, a food system concept is such. Sorry, I was going too fast. And it need to be now our work to pursue the action tracks to get an overarching system concept for our needs in Namibia. How that action tracks are linked, or how can we put them in perspective, is you can see here on the PowerPoint, because all of them are linked, and that is quite crucial for that whole food system chain. So you see on top, ensuring access to safe and nutritious food, and that is overarching overall. The other ones, and that is also very important, are all linked. So that means the shifting to sustainable consumption patterns, boosting nature-positive production at sufficient scale. So that are also crucial things, specifically under the climate change, what we are experiencing nowadays. And then for sure, that is linked to advancing equitable livelihoods and value distribution. And here, I mean, they have on their template here, raising income, distribution risk, expensing inclusion, and creating jobs. But I will here already add, for our own purpose, also the point of gender inequality. And it is quite crucial for our agricultural systems. We will come later to that again. And then number 5 is building resilience to vulnerability, shocks, and stress. But on that 5 tracks, there is not directly mentioned that we have much worse human tragedy. So each day, around, and it might be even now more, 900 million people go hungry. Amongst them are 180 million children under 5 years of age. Every year, around 9 million people die of hunger. When the UN warns, number of people starving to death could be double amid the pandemic. In Namibia, currently, we have approximately 600,000 people are food insecure. What is a lot? Of course, you know, we are in Namibia a small population, but we will come to that PowerPoint, to that presentation just now. We have first to ask why people are suffering and how can we aim, because additionally to food insecurity and linked to the food systems are food safety. There are 2 important factors which are not directly mentioned now in that 5 steps, but which are very crucial for Namibia. Food safety and food security for all Namibians through sustainable development should be our aim and actually prioritized in our discussion. But is that actually vision, or can that become a reality? That is a question what I throw in already for later discussion. Because what we are aiming, and that you will see now, we have then to work on that points as well. Every person has access to sufficient food to sustain a healthy and a productive life. Malnutrition is absent. Food originates from efficient, effective, and low-cost food systems. Food production is compatible with sustainable natural resource use. So that are the 5 points which we should actually aim that it can become reality with our plans. And now here, everyone might wonder now, yeah, but we know Namibia, what's going on. But here I put that specifically in the PowerPoint that you can see or actually laugh about our situation or even cry, because we have 824,000 square kilometer and a population which is estimated at 2.5 million, growing at an annual rate of 1.2%, and it's thus one of the lowest population densities in the world. So what means that? In another country, or the towns, even South Africa or in Europe, we can even not compare, or even Angola, they have 25,000 millions and 50 millions of people. But why does we have, when we have a waste of land and a population of just 2.5 million, that is a quarter of Johannesburg, we are saying we are food insecure. So something is definitely not right with our development. We have here to start to adjust it according to the needs. And here by that picture as well, I make even some additional notes. I doesn't want to do so many slides. We had now the size and the population. So we have more than enough place. We know always when you are reading, we are saying we are semi-arid and we have droughts. But you also know our country, we have the Caprivi on now some basis region, and we have actually Kavango East and West. So, and they have ample of water, they have fertile ground. So what's the matter? Already that 2 regions, the Zambezi and the Kavango region, can serve whole Namibia with food, and including feed for animals. The other point what we have to discuss and find a solution is the opportunity for farming. We also put always in the front, actually, yeah, land reform need to be done, and resettlement farming doesn't work, and all that things are, in my humble opinion, excuses. So we should pick them as politicians, as academics, and try to make something out of that. But we will go in detail a bit later. And also what is very shaming, actually, because we are food insecure, we are importing the most of our food. So what means that? We have to pay, but we don't create employment, we don't develop somehow correctly. So here also we have to work. And then additionally, I was also mentioning food safety. That is the other critical point in Namibia where we have to address. I tried it many, many years while I was in the government, but I was not coming very far because it is not a priority in the politics. But I mean, then they're asking, yeah, but when I said, why is it not important? Yeah, but there is no one who is getting sick. But that is not the case. We don't have figures. So here also we have to work on, because currently our system regarding food safety is splitted. It means locally the custodian, or officially the custodian for food safety, is Ministry of Health and Social Services. But food safety in Namibia is mainly meat, because that is our agriculture currently mainly going for livestock farming. So, and then we are exporting our meat. We are exporting it to the US, to Europe, to China. We can even send it to Russia. We got all the approvals. And here now, the Directorate of Veterinary Service had to come in, but that was now due to the World Trade Organization, which are determining in the OIE and also for the codex. So here veterinarians are needed to actually for the certifications to allow that international expert. So we have at the export abattoirs and export processing plants veterinarians, which knowing the work and which can do actually the certification. But on local level, there is Ministry of Health and Social Services. Human doctors don't learn meat inspections, and they are using environmental health inspectors to do inspections. At export abattoirs, the inspectors are not allowed to do actually critical final decisions. So something is not right in our system as such, because we Namibians have to eat food, like I said, mainly than the meat, which are not falling under a correct standard. So that is for me also one of the most important points, which is linked also to livestock farming and so enhancing the food insecurity. And the last point now, what was also many times discussed, you find many documents, but still it is not solved in Namibia, is the stakeholder coordination correlation. That was many times identified in studies that the biggest problem we are having is there is no stakeholder coordination and communication. So that was now the points for the discussions, quite a lot. You are welcome. I can give them later again. So I will now continue. What is the time? I think I'm a bit over the time, but I got more due to Mesak Mulunga's short speech. I can speak a bit longer. Oh?
You still have another 5 minutes?
Okay, then I make it. Then I just make fast. But the most important parts was actually now the points I mentioned. And now here I will just briefly bring some examples on the way we might solve that shortcomings or also enhancing the thinking on the way forward. I mean, here now in that food system wheel framework, I will just pick out the most important things here. There are actually referring to the 3 dimensions of sustainability: economic, social, and environmental. So we have now that keywords. That is all over in the FIO UN, that is always mentioned. But here's another but where we have to think about, because that systems are for sure also linked to each other, but there are shortcomings. And now the latest suggestion, call it like that, where there also was coming up with some examples, which I actually copied and pasted from the inter-academic partnership. There are some ideas which might be helpful for our discussion a bit later. So you see the food system, what we had before also seen, is simplified, and you see the blue spots. That blue spots now showing you research and innovation domains. And that is that where we have actually to come in and make the changes. So here now just some examples, how we can address them and what we might have to add in that system, what is currently recommended. And that is the so-called, I love the One Health concept, because I see it as a link between safety, health, environment, and sustainable development forming. So let's see. The pillars, which are usually considered, what I said already, economic, social, and environmental factors, there are lacking some other pillars. So what I introduce for our discussion is how important, and that is for Namibia specifically, is the culture pillar, the technology, it means research and innovation pillar, and the political pillar. So we have actually created now 6 pillars for our sustainable development where we can work on. And that will definitely provide us with a strong basis. Here now, for sure, as I'm working now by the university, I will come to the inter-academic partnerships. We had before also already something, for example, for ReForum. So here, what we have to do is provide opportunities for future research, innovation on food, nutrition, security, food safety, and agriculture. So that is actually where then UNAM have to come in, or we have also NAST actually as university can come in and can contribute to the solution. But here now, and that is important, therefore I make it very big and bolded, because we know academics like to do research, they have to do research, of course, that is for publications, and so it is also bringing out their name. But here we have a bit to change our thinking and change so our research, because it need actually, what is now needed is basic science. Science what can be used on the ground. And the university changed and added actually to the university pillars, what was before also there, but weaker, was added community-based research, and secondly, also entrepreneurship enhancing research. So here is also, luckily, I like it very much, a change in the relevant research topics, and we should actually look into problem-solving research and innovation, specifically in nutrition, food, and agriculture for our country. And here you see, because many might not know what it means, One Health. So here just a picture. One Health is actually the linkage between animal, human, and ecosystem. Sorry, you might wonder why is animal in front. I'm from house a veterinarian, so by me are the animals in front, and then the people, and then the ecosystem is coming in, and they need to be balanced, and that is actually then the One Health concept. And we know currently the whole world is a bit upside down, not only with COVID, but also with the relation between our animals and our ecosystem, which is damaged. And so the human being have to come up with practical solutions. How can it be done? And what means that? One Health means not to change what we are doing, but how we do it. And some suggestions how we can reach that is through social innovation and motivation, creating awareness in a specific topic, and educate, advise, and train when necessary. So here are simple things which we have now to pack in our current situation, so and then come up with solutions on the way forward. It is also just some pictures I liked, because I don't like the dry PowerPoints, but specifically that picture here with the studying, with the youngsters here, they are liking their study, they are not always. So here are things what we have to consider, and also with the grandma, because nowadays, and that is also important in our discussions, because we can definitely use also social network to create awareness and also education. And that is the 7 high priority policy actions where we also need for our discussions. They are very simple. Invest in human researchers, improve access to productive researchers and remunerative employment, improve markets, infrastructure and institution, expand appropriate research, knowledge and technology, improve natural research management, promote good governance, and support sound national and international trade and macroeconomic policies. And that was my last slide here. Thank you. Stay safe and healthy. And that picture I put on that you see that human health are linked to a lot of outer factors, which we all actually should consider during our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me know if
Thank
there are
you.
any questions.
Yes, I see there are some questions that are coming, but before we go to the questions, I'm going to take, the next speaker, and we'll take the questions all at once.
Okay.
Thank you very much. As you were talking, maybe let me call the next speaker. Then I will say a few things while the next speaker is preparing. So our next speaker here is going to be, that is Mr. Nhlanhla Lupahla, who is going to give us a lead paper on the analysis of the current STI. I guess, those are science and technology institutions, ecosystems in Namibia towards development of response capacity of development challenges and opportunities. Mr. Nhlanhla is the Deputy Director for Innovation in the Ministry of Higher Education, Technology and Innovation. Mr. Nhlanhla, may you please prepare yourself so that you give us your take. While you are busy uploading your presentation, if you have one, I just want to say a few things that I have picked from the previous speaker. In your presentation, you kept on saying the issues are interlinked. Therefore, we need to see things from, a system perspective. I just had, this system coming up again and again and again. And one thing that I've also picked is that research and innovation has a key role to play. However, research cannot be done as usual. Research needs to be done in a different way. You mentioned things that I felt ReForum is smiling. Issues of community-based research, entrepreneurship, based research. I'm sure our ReForum partners are very happy to hear that, because this is what they promote. Thank you, Mr. Nhlanhla.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes.
Dr. Hlami Ngwenya.
Yes.
I'm sure we are the only two who can pronounce each other's names.
Exactly. That is why I keep on saying Nhlanhla, and you can say Hlami. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. And let me acknowledge you as the moderator of this important dialogue. And let me also acknowledge Prof. Adipala Ekwamu for your selfless dedication to feeding our countries through your research outputs that are driven by ReForum. You can see my screen?
Yes, I can see it, but you need to put it on the, maybe go, I can see the middle one. Maybe you have to go to the beginning of the slides. And you can put it on the slide mode.
I think it is on the slide mode. Let me see.
Okay. I see from slide 5.
Just click on a slideshow from the beginning.
Yes. There we go. And you put it on the slideshow.
Top left corner. Just move on the left. There down.
Yeah, that's what I have done, and I'm not sure why.
Maybe you try from at the bottom of them. You can try the bottom icon there.
Next to you see where the notes.
Yeah.
There we go. Yes. Yeah.
Is that fine?
No.
Anyway, you can go on.
All right, maybe something went wrong here. Okay, thank you very much once again. The presentation that I will give is contextualized around or premised on Jackson's 2011 definition of STI ecosystems, STI being science, technology, and innovation ecosystems, specifically looking at Namibia. Jackson defines innovation ecosystems as the complex relationships that are formed between key stakeholders whose essential goal is to enable technology development and innovation. Of course, this is a very broad definition, but can also be applied specifically to agriculture, R&D, and value chains, which is our aspect of analysis today in terms of food systems. I should say, as the ministry that is responsible for driving the research, science, technology, and innovation agenda in the country, we have key institutions that are responsible for implementing our policies, STI policies. And I want to flag out the National Commission on Research, Science, and Technology, which is the apex body that is mandated to provide for the promotion, coordination, and development of research, science, and technology in Namibia, created by an Act of Parliament, the Research, Science, and Technology Act of 2004. I specifically want to highlight that one of the key mandates of this commission is to develop the national program on research, science, technology, and innovation, in which the national direction on research, science, and technology is set out. And obviously, the direction should address our developmental priorities that would include ensuring provision of sufficient food for our citizens. Hence, if I use this model here, I would view the National Commission on Research, Science, and Technology as this gentleman holding this whole network, which is our STI ecosystem, to ensure that it has the balance to address these developmental needs that I'm referring to. So my task...
Just one moment. Your slides are not moving. You might have to move it manually. You just go and click on the slide that you are talking about.
Like which one do you see now?
We still see the opening slide. I'm sure you are talking on slide 4 now, no?
Slide 4. I'm not sure now whether I should just put it on
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, maybe I should just leave it here.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Sure. Go ahead.
So we are saying the NCRST should really be the one coordinating this network to ensure its effectiveness in delivering the needs, the developmental needs and agenda of the country. Now, in our case, Namibia, we are actually in the process of developing our national innovation strategy to try and address the gaps that have been mapped through different initiatives that include a scoping mission that was conducted with the assistance of UNESCO, 2015-2016. We try and define the key players in our national system of innovation. I saw the question that was posted to Dr. Hembeker's presentation. How can we best strengthen the weak stakeholders' coordination and linkages? That was one of the weaknesses that was picked up. So we, in our policy response, have identified as key players beyond the triple helix model, which only refers to government, industry, and academia. We also acknowledge that research centers, government, civic society, informal sector, industry, finance, academia, and TVET, including indigenous knowledge holders, should be active participants in strengthening this network. Of course, aspects of data monitoring, data management, bring us to involve our Namibia Statistics Agency as a key player. I need to indicate here that when it comes to the informal sector, it is important for us, Namibia, as a country, that this sector plays an active role because it involves mostly women and youth as the dominating players in this sector. And we have seen during this lockdown, during COVID pandemic, that this was the sector that was mostly affected. It provides employment to an estimated 150,000 people and contributes about 12% to our GDP. So it is as equally important that we consider that our R&D initiatives also address our informal sector. And I think that's where agriculture can play an important role. Industry through technology development. Finance, we are aware that as a country, we have a target of 1% expenditure of our GDP on R&D, but at the moment, I think we are at 0.35%. Challenges include poor response in terms of financing innovation from the private sector, and this might largely be due to our policies that are not incentivizing the participation of private sector. We should continue to look at how we can deal with these issues. Our scoping reports, like the UNESCO mission, has identified strengths and opportunities of Namibia's national innovation system. We have the advantage that we have an emergence and growth of public R&D institutions, including our universities and sectoral R&D institutes. For example, you go to Ministry of Fisheries, you'll see that they have strong research institutes that support marine research. And this applies to all our other ministries. Basically, we have research units that are dedicated to research. This is a positive aspect about our climate. We have institutional STI policies, and we have just reviewed our science, technology, and innovation policy, in addition to having launched our space science policy last week. This is a positive aspect because we have really tried to ensure quality and benchmark on some of the continent's policies that have shown the capacity to address these developmental needs. We have relatively good infrastructure supported by strong ICT infrastructure, and there is a general increase in interest, including our political leaders, in improving a policy environment for scientific research and innovation. Now, the challenges that we have that have been picked up, as identified by the participant who posted a question, the weak institutional linkages between universities and between industry and universities. Our low gross expenditure on research and development, which is below the AU target of 1% of GDP. Few full-time equivalent researchers. Most of our university professors spend more time on teaching than researching. And this points out to the need to increase the human capacity development of our nationals in many key sectors of the economy. I have mentioned already the weak levels of private sector engagement, and this points out to us needing to review some of our policies, especially in the sectors of industrialization, to see how best we can attract investments from private sector. Now, in addition, we have just completed the implementation of the STEM and Gender Advancement Project, where one of the components looked at our data management. And it points out that our national STI indicators are not properly defined or understood by our policymakers. This obviously implies that if we cannot develop policies that are informed by data, we will end up developing these so-called and me too policies just to have it on paper, but they will have no impact. So we need to develop the capacity of policymakers in terms of managing indicators that point out to the impact of the policies that we develop. Lack of clarity on metrics and coordinated management, which also points out to that coordination issue. And obviously the poor reporting will mean we cannot review our policies to deal with the required outcomes. I should say that in this ecosystem, we have strategic partnerships and collaboration as one of our priorities. I should mention that in the past, we have benefited from the Korean International Cooperation Agency, where we hosted a national innovation conference, where the theme was forging a national consensus on innovation that looked at priorities for our innovation agenda, and we identified the need to strengthen grassroots innovation due to the large informal sector that we have. The SAGA project on strengthening methodological approaches in monitoring and evaluation of STI indicators, we are working on strengthening the coordination, especially in data management, so that we know what is happening out of the programs that we are implementing. Otherwise, this may be a waste of resources if we don't know the impact of our programs. We appreciate that this time around we have ReForum. I'm only putting 2021 to 2024, starting from today's dialogue, going to the triennial that Prof. Adipala talked about, where we expect we should have been able to build enough research capacity to ensure secure food systems for our country. In a nutshell, this is the status quo of our STI ecosystems, but I should stress that one of the biggest weaknesses that we need to strengthen is the issue of data. And thus, we have been emphasizing that only in God we shall accept information, but all other sectors, for us to develop our policies, you should really back it up with data. Policy development or formulation is a very expensive process. It's not just about putting up a document that is launched and then nothing comes out of it. You have to ensure that you invest in producing accurate data that should inform us what our priorities need to be. And thank you for your attention in this regard.
Thank you so much. What I have picked and what I have liked is this phrase that I'm going to use as well. You know, we have to move from the Me Too policies and adopt, you know, the data-based, you know, policies that are informed by, you know, science. And I like that very much. But what I also picked is that you also concur with the previous speaker about the role, the important role that research can actually play in ensuring that, we address the issues of, we achieve, the zero hunger. You also emphasize the issue of, human capacity development, but also strengthening the monitoring and evaluation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to our two speakers. And I would like you to just open your videos, the two speakers, Dr. Hebenga and Tlantla. I would like you to open your speakers. Then there are some few questions that I'm picking from the Q&A. And I would like to encourage our viewers, our listeners there to ask, questions. Just go to the Q&A. Dr. Hebenga, there was one question from Cecilia Jonah, who is asking about, I think she picked from your presentation when you were making reference to the number of Namibians who are food insecure. She would like you to share, that reference, because in some of the studies that she comes across, she finds, the number of 400,000 people, and you have made mention 600,000 Namibians. Okay, so that is one comment or question that actually came about to say, maybe may you please, share more information about that so that, she gets, more informed. Yes, the other question was that strengthening, the weak stakeholder coordination, which Ntlantla has already responded to. What was the other question? There is another question from Maud. I think Maud is actually asking the question joining from Uganda. He's saying the concept of One Health is very critical, especially now that we are dealing with the pandemic. How do we move on based on Namibians' experience, where the population is small as compared to the densely populated countries like Uganda? What is your take on that? How do we move on? We understood that Namibia is a little bit small as compared to other countries. What are some of the experiences there? I think, Tlantla, you can also take the response if you want, but also Dr. Hebenga can respond to that.
Yeah, thank you. I can respond. And I don't know what is going on. I can't open, the video is not going to open. So, but you have my photo on the other flyer. Sorry for that, I tried.
No problem.
But the questions I received, what was with my figures, it was approximately 600,000, and that was out from two documents from the integrated food security data. They are standing to 423,000, but here they are writing clearly that it was without Erongo. So I was finding out, and remember, Erongo have quite a lot of fish industry, and Swakopmund, they have a lot of tourism. So therefore, I got then the additional figures. Therefore, I wrote approximately with Erongo in. So that was the first question. Mm-hmm. And the second question was on the warm health. I mean, this is a huge country and few people. So by us, I mean, for sure, we're having the problem also that the urbanization, but still we have enough space. And I mean, by me, that was now only enhancing for our discussions. We have to work towards development by us, specifically, mainly in the north with our livestock. That is our biggest problem. And we having actually some ideas. That is a big project. Now to explain it here will be far too much. But we integrated, for example, water resources, the way we are blending and supplying seeds, and how we will improve actually the livestock sectors. And here, as I also wrote it in the PowerPoint, is that in smaller groups in the region directly, and also continuous monitoring and mentors. It was done, the AgriBank is working with mentorship, and it is also working quite well. I know for countries with a huge population, might it be more difficult, but here we can come up when we are looking into that also with other solutions. But as I said, I worked with a team quite long and intensive on that points, how we can really improve. Because one point I have not mentioned, otherwise it was getting also too much in the presentation, is often there are from the UN, from the EU, there are always, we are having now the European Development Funds, they are giving money, but they also often have their own ideas without knowing the developing country. So here also the government have to come in and then also to try to get it tailor-made for the specific country and the circumstances. You cannot develop in the US or in Europe or wherever programs for developing countries who does not match. And that is specifically now again for Namibia. I mean, we cannot adopt industry for each and everything in a country who have just 2.5 million people. It doesn't work. So we will never have high industrialized things, but we can be, we must be proud of, we have intensive agricultural land where we can work on and get on that basis a balanced economic system, which are providing for us in Namibia as well. There will definitely also for export markets more than enough products available.
Thank you so much. Nhlanhla, what is your take? How do you want to respond to some of these questions? Yes.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll try and respond to the One Health concept. I will not be able to respond to it as an expert, but the concept itself defines an approach that recognizes that the health of people is closely connected to the health of animals and, of course, our shared environment. Obviously, the difference between Uganda and us, as rightfully said by the participant who asked this question.
Maud.
Maud, yes, Maud. Sorry for that.
No
by
problem.
Maud, she's asking in terms of what experiences we can share, looking at the fact that they are a densely populated country, and we obviously looking at the area as presented by Dr. Hembecker, we should have more space. However, I think the bottom line here might also point to what I said about the need to strengthen as well our indigenous knowledge systems, because it points out, as said, the health of our animals equally will affect our health. But do we have such resources during this pandemic that we equally prioritize all these sectors? Maybe this is where we should bring in indigenous knowledge systems to deal with traditional medicines to assist in this space. And I know Uganda is popular for strong IKS systems. I mean, IKS, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. As we are responding to that, and when you bring the issue of indigenous knowledge system, I remember with Dr. Hebenga's presentation, she also brought the issue of culture into the mix. I would like to draw your attention. I see on the chat box, I see a message, from Anke Vice Height. Yes, she's from Uganda. She's actually sharing about the university. What is it called? I think Farm Biotrak Mbaramba University of Science and Technology in Uganda, where they do a lot of research on traditional medicine, herbal medicine, natural cosmetics, and functional beverages, domestication of medicinal plants. And, those innovation, basing it on science, having a little bit of, science and understanding, that indigenous, knowledge and system. She shared there her contact details. I think if you want to learn more about that, you can actually engage with him. Thank you very much. We are moving forward, and thank you very much again to Nhlanhla and Dr. Herbinger. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving with our program. We are going to the next round. So these are not, position papers per se, but we want to hear the perspectives from different angles. We are going to have 2 rounds of discussions here. Firstly, we are going to hear the perspective on addressing some of the emerging issues like, climate change and environmental degradation. And we're also going to hear some perspective on post-harvest, issues. These will be presented by 2 knowledgeable speakers. On one hand, we have Dr. Simon. Let me put here, we have Dr. Simon Angombe, who is an Associate Dean of School of Agriculture and Fisheries Sciences at the University of Namibia. Secondly, we are going to hear from Mr. Alfio Siamba, who is a Senior Manager, Market, Business and Product Development, Agro-Marketing Trade Agency in Namibia. That is a mouthful, but yes, we are going to hear what they have to say. We are going to start with Dr. Agombe, who's going to give us the perspective on issues around climate change and environmental degradation. Dr. Agombe, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Let me try to share my screen.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm connecting from Noida, one of the campus of the University of Namibia. It's very cold here. Today it was -2, so that's why it's getting colder here.
Oh, you can have your scarf. It's also cold here in Pretoria. Yes,
okay.
Over to you.
Okay. Okay, can you all see?
Yes.
Okay,
you might want to put it on a slideshow.
I think it's on the slideshow.
Okay. No, I see all your slides.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, let me do something.
I see all your slides, and I'm thinking 28. I hope you manage within the given time. Yes.
Can you see them now?
I can see it loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. As I said, my name is Simon Angobe. I'll try to be fast.
Thank you.
Yes, I was given a topic perspective on addressing emerging climate challenges such as climate change and environmental degradation. But I want to approach it like with the view, with a paper that actually that was done by the University of Namibia, and since like I'm not too sure, yeah, by the University of Namibia and University of Cape Town, with a title on actually a global warming of 1.5 degree and higher, what it means for Namibia. So this actually, my presentation might be like, I will not go into much detail in terms of like a Paris Agreement. I think you all know that the Paris Agreement have a global goal of limiting global warming below 2%. And of course, for Namibia, local warming and drying will be a greater than the global average and so on. So even at that 1.5 degree increase in global temperature will actually have a severe impact have severe local impact, which is negative, affecting water supply, agriculture, health, and also any other sectors and so on. So now let's move into anticipating that 1.5 degree Celsius. What does it mean actually in terms of the world? So the current emissions reduction promise like fall short of what is needed to meet this target. And of course, like for vulnerable country like Namibia, this seemingly small increment in global temperature can actually lead to a local climate conditions which can interact with and worsen the existing vulnerability and so on. So Namibia is very vulnerable in terms of like to climate change, and also the community in Namibia have little capacity to adapt to those impacts. So especially at 1.5 degree Celsius, which is actually projected. So therefore, there's a need as Namibia to adopt a extensive, adaptive, and also transformative response in order to deal with this increasing risk associated with the global temperature rise of 1.5 and so on. So what happened actually with this paper, they divided the country into 5 zones: the semi-arid, semi-arid south, arid north, arid south, and also hyper. So what does it mean? For example, the study was trying to look at what are the impact of this. For example, here we have hyper-arid. What will happen if actually this region, arid, actually increases further? What does it mean? It means actually it reduces the land suitability, because like it takes over most of this area. It means like most of this area becomes actually arid, and also people will not be able to cultivate anything from there. So that's actually the risk which actually associated with. So what are the anticipated now changes in terms of Namibia climate change and its extremes? So the temperatures in Namibia are set to rise much more rapidly than the global average. The study shows that actually for each 0.5 degree Celsius increment in global temperature, Namibia will increase by 0.5 to 1% more. But that 1% or 0.5 is actually a lot in terms of like Namibia. So at 1.5 degrees Celsius increase, the duration of the heat wave will increase up to 59 days, for example. What will happen now, for example, if you are planting something and it's exposed to extreme weather for 59 days, actually it will reduce in terms of like a crop yield and so on. The heat wave is also going to increase, but what does it mean? Actually, increasing temperature will also increase the heat stress in Namibia vulnerable sectors, for example, agriculture, water, and so on. So that's why we need actually to see how we can actually adapt or maybe cope with these changes in terms of temperature. So also in terms of rainfall, some of the area, especially in the western area, they receive little less rainfall. But now if you have a further decrease of that rainfall, where you're receiving only 50 millimeter of rainfall, or even 0, for example, if now you have a decrease in annual rainfall in that area, what will happen and so on. So at the increasing level for global warming, a total annual rainfall is projected to decrease across all the countries. But like the message here is actually the impact of decreased rainfall may result in an increasing expansion of the hyper-arid zone, the one that actually I was talking about, into arid south. What does it mean? It actually leads to the loss of land suitability for rain-fed agriculture and also livestock, which actually have bigger impact on the food system on the country. So that's actually what I was referring to. For example, if this area is actually expanded through to the arid south, you will have actually the farmers which are in this area, which are farming. Now, if it becomes hyper-arid, it means like these people here, they will not be able to farm. So they mean like they need to migrate and go somewhere, but where? That's actually the question. So in terms of like a decreasing frequency but increasing intensity of heavy rainfall, of course, like we all know, like as temperature increases and rainfall decreases, as temperature increases, rainfall decreases in Namibia. The amount of days with the heavy rainfall are expected to decrease across the arid and semi-arid zones and so on. But like the message actually we are taking here is in terms of the amount of rain falling within extreme heavy events, the zone will experience an increase of that 15%. Mind you, for example, we have now heavy rainfall, which is actually just falling within even maybe 10 minutes and so on. The runoff, for example, the soil erosion which is taking place is really going to be massive. So what about now on that degree, the impact on Namibia vulnerability sectors? So I only pick two sectors, water and agriculture. So in terms of the water sector, increasing pressure on already challenged system. Because like Namibia is a dry country. Now, with that pressure, actually it's going to be, is going to cause actually economic losses like to the country. So Namibia is exposed to a large variability in rainfall between seasons and years. So making the country prone to water scarcity, drought, and also flooding. So at 1.5 degrees Celsius and above increase in global temperature, the step changes in local temperature and rainfall will drive further water scarcity because we are already in terms of like we don't have actually water. So it increases, for example, increase in terms of evapotranspiration. The temperature increases will lead to an increase in evapotranspiration in Namibia. And also in terms of runoff, increased temperature and evaporation, as well as decreased rainfall, will have a significant impact on water surfaces sources. So surface rainfall would decrease by approximately that 19%, also 30% at 1.5 and 2%, 2 degrees Celsius respectively. So the other important thing is also the streamfall and the groundwater recharge. So because in Namibia, we also depend on boreholes, for example. Mind you, if we have a decreased rainfall, what does it mean? Actually, the groundwater recharge is increasingly variable, and less rainfall, more evaporation, and more intense drought are expected to similarly affect the groundwater recharge in the country. So if we move further to agriculture, like in terms of, we depend on agriculture, decreases in crop and also life productivity. So the Namibia agricultural sector is clearly vulnerable to the impact of that 1.5. For example, the prolonged drought conditions in 2018 led to the death of almost 300 cattle in a certain area, and also the relocations of 17,000 animals in that area. So the large arid climate does not allow for extensive agricultural activities, but with livestock rearing making up the majority of the sector. So because like it does not support that, but actually we as Namibians actually depends on livestock and so on. So the moment when actually is affected even with that 1 degree, actually the whole livestock sector will be really affected. The continual warming and drying will most likely lead to the increased losses in crop and also livestock sector. So in terms of further on agriculture, decreasing area of agricultural land, I think I talked about this already. If you have, and also in terms of like a crop productivity, that increase would have severe impact on crops and so on. As I said, the moment when we have already that problem in terms of like low productivity, it actually just worsened the situation of the community on the ground. The livestock, we depend on livestock. So the problem, like if it's affected, is actually affect the whole economy in terms of agriculture and so on. So what are the now implications for Namibia policy and development agenda? Of course, like we have the NDP, what we call Namibia Development Plans and so on, which is actually built on the pillars of economic progress, social transformation, environmental sustainability, and also good governance. So, but where the climate change does not feature in the NDP, the impact of that global warming of 1.5 actually and above on the local climate will pose a significant challenge for Namibia vulnerability sectors and so on, and also compromise the country's ability to meet its developmental goals, which is actually are set in the NDPs. The policy on climate change, which was introduced like in 2011, it outlines its ambitions to improve cropping capacities and also reduce vulnerability across communities and sectors. But the likelihood of global temperatures reaching and exceeding 1.5 within the next few decades make it really necessary for the government to take an urgent adaptation to ensure its vulnerability sectors are able to withstand and also adapt to these projected changes. So in terms of like an implication, again, the high temperatures and decreasing rainfall would exacerbate actually the water scarcity, increasing intensity of rainfall events. We have significant impact on the environment. To enable climate smart development and decision making requires our efforts to make sure that to make a dedicated effort to develop and disseminate information about projected climate changes and also their impact across all levels. So Namibia agricultural sector is actually comprises of like many communities and so on. The problem is like the moment when they're affected, actually the whole economy is affected. So the livelihood of these subsistence farmers and small scale farmers are already supported by remittance and also pensions, and many young people are migrating to urban areas in search of alternative opportunities. Because like now, if these rural areas are affected, you are expecting to have more migration to urban areas and so on. So there's a need also for strong institutional of climate change adaptation and potential impact of global warming and higher in Namibia may have extensive knock on the effect of in all economic sectors. But like most importantly is through creating this enabling environment for community-based adaptation, the government could ensure that isolated communities, there are those isolated communities which have the highest vulnerability, are able to adapt to current and future changes and so on. So I think what we need to take from here is some of these stress, which actually I have mentioned, are more frequent, intense drought and flooding could be combated by stronger responses from all stakeholders to improve the capacity and agency of local communities to adapt sustainable livelihood practices, conservation agriculture, and so on. That's actually a way to go. In conclusion, hence Namibia need to anticipate and plan for a rapid change in local weather and climate. To adapt, we need to adapt to that. 1.5 is a reality, 1.5 degrees Celsius. Namibia will need to accelerate the implementation of its policy on climate change through identified adaptation options outlined in that policy action plan. And also with this instrument in place, I think and aware of the near-term risk of 1.5, because we're almost there, warming, Namibia will be in a far better position to respond to the impact of associated with 1.5 degrees Celsius and above. And I thank you so much.
Wow, wow, wow. I didn't believe that you can actually finish within, the time, but you did it. Thank you so much. What I'm picking as you were presenting is just one thing. What I've learned or what I've picked is that climate change is real. It's real. It's real. It's real. I'll leave it there. But this is what I have picked from your presentation. And the question that I'm asking to our colleagues in Namibia and everyone, what does this mean for the resilience of the food systems in Namibia? If climate change is real, the way we have seen it being projected here, what does it mean for the resilience of the food systems in Namibia? Secondly, how can science and innovation be better positioned to make a difference in this regard? Yeah. And lastly, how can everyone play a role in making a difference? This is not a question to you. I'm just, posing it as I'm wrapping your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving. If you have questions, go to the Q&A chat box and type. Not only questions, if you have comments, do that as well. at this point in time, we are going to call upon Mr. Alpheus Siamba, who's going to give us the perspective from the post-harvest, issues. Over to you, Sam.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Siamba.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we just had a power failure in the whole area at our offices just before. So I'm just trying to jiggle between doing the presentation from my phone.
Yes,
with the limited power. I tried to share the slide. I don't know if it's showing.
Yes, it's showing.
All right, so I'll try to be brief.
Yes, and one thing, I like it, when we talk about climate change initially, it actually forces us to adapt. And thank you very much for adapting. When there's no power, you adapt. Thank you so much. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and all the viewers. So I'm just trying to. I'll show my face quickly. Okay. Is everybody able to see me?
Yes, we can see you. Thank you.
All right. So I'll take the video away just for the sake of the battery.
No problem.
I don't want to be interrupted in the middle. All right. Thank you for the opportunity. All right. So my presentation will just highlight the perspective on post-harvest losses in Namibia. And to start with, I would just like to share the mandate of the agronomic agricultural marketing and trade agency, or agro-marketing trade agency, AMTA. We are to manage national fresh produce business hubs and national strategic food reserves. And the main objective is really gearing towards food safety and security, and as well as implementation of marketing and trade in terms of agricultural products, driving local production, or supporting rather local production, but more so also to deal with those particular issues of post-harvest losses. Because we had a scenario over the years where the small and upcoming producers were challenged quite a lot in terms of storage facilities and market access for their commodities that they're producing locally. But then government found it important and necessary to establish infrastructure that can support the small-scale producers, especially due to their capacity, limited capacity to be able to handle post-harvest losses. And what we have is a situation where now the government has put up the National Fresh Produce Business Hubs, and that is in the regions. We have one in Oshana region, and then we have one in the Kavango East region. And we have a small sort of distribution facility that also serves for the same purpose in Windhoek. And those infrastructures are equipped with cooling facilities, sorting and grading facilities. And this is really to support the local farmers to be able to extend the shelf life of the produce. Now, it has been ongoing for quite a couple of years, but then when we look at the establishment of these facilities, and we operationalized in 2013 and 2014, that was more our founding year. And we have seen quite a drastic change over the years to see, if you look at the fresh produce procurement slide, that is really representing the number of tonnage that we've been able to handle through those facilities. And we are looking at about more than 53% of those total figures to be local production. So that really tells us the progress that has been made and the sense of the local farmers getting a relief and actively participating in the market systems. And if you look at the figures, you know, there will be some fluctuations in the last 2 financial years, and those are just attributed to other factors such as the drought and all these various shortcomings. And we have been really also challenged with a couple of other issues like imports. And then, of course, COVID, we cannot emphasize that much. It is a known phenomenon everywhere. But we have seen, in terms of fresh produce, at least those facilities that were established for the purpose of addressing the issues of post-harvest losses, carrying a capacity of at least 26,848.02 tons of fresh produce handled through those facilities. And like I said, about 53% to 60% of that is local commodities. So now we are confident that the farmers were able to now bring their produce through those facilities while we're working to support them to attain the market or gain access. And now I want to move on to the grain as well. And we have seen that Namibia, like many other SADC countries, have maize meal for staple food, as well as mahangu, especially so much in Namibia. And government also came up with those facilities, which are the silos or National Strategic Food Reserve, for the purposes of also absorbing or uptaking the local production of grain. And we have seen up to 53,823 in the past 7 to 8 years since we operationalized. But now that is more the impact. But now looking at the current perspective, and one of the critical aspects is research and development that the NAB is doing in conjunction with the University of Namibia to support this, because they are the facilitators. We are just implementers, and we are just role players in the industry for those particular issues that we are referring to. But now we also have gone into the area that we realize is very critical if we want to deal with post-harvest losses. Some of it is then the value addition aspect, because in Namibia, you have a situation where your production is quite seasonal, and you have a bumper harvest in a particular season, because we have off-season where we cannot really produce certain commodities. And you find that most of those peak seasons for production, there are specific crops that do very well. And we have the NAB also implementing border control, because there are some control products that we have, and they do implement those, and they enforce the control to say, if we have, let's say, bumper harvest, which can actually meet a certain level of the demand for the country, we close the borders just to accommodate the uptake for the local produce. And we have seen that sometimes we have an abundance, more than what we can consume in that particular season. So we realize that we need to really strengthen product development, value addition in terms of converting some of these fresh produce into various commodities that the market can take. And we have areas of interest in terms of long-term storage facilities, be it for onions, I would just rather say fruits and vegetables. So in the long run, so those are some of the areas we're looking at to address post-harvest losses. And then we are also looking into processing in terms of packaging as well, semi-value addition, dicing and cutting. And we are busy studying product formulation so that we can actually cater for our farmers and for the local produce. So even though farmers still experience issues of post-harvest losses, we can still attribute it to the fact of being distant. Sometimes there may be losses, but we are getting more and more established and reaching out. We are busy with outreach programs to really map our farmers and bring them together in various groups according to the kind of activities that they're engaged in or what kind of crops they're producing in those zones. We cluster them in order for us now to gain access to make sure that we are at par with their production activities for us to be able to absorb their commodities. And hence, those are some of the efforts that we are implementing. And we can see with these figures that we have shared, we can say there are really those milestones that have been achieved. The situation is not the same as 8 years ago. And if we can see that, at least even from the local producers, you are getting, for example, in terms of grain, all the 53,823 tons that you see of grain is just local production. And with the fresh produce, we are talking about a figure of over 14,000 metric tons. And that just brings me to the area of now saying, even though post-harvest issues still exist, a lot of effort has been made in the industry to minimize, to bring down the losses. I would say at this point in time, if you look at my slide there, it's saying about 20% of what is produced is lost. And I'm talking about a number now that we say from the time frame of inception of AMTA up to now, we can say we have confidently reduced the situation from over 50% of post-harvest losses going down. And these numbers are going to continue to decrease significantly the more we intensify. And we've been educating the farmers. Sometimes it's the dynamics of the market. So because the market is also organized in a way that there is no strict control to a certain extent, or the liberty that the farmer has is available to them in terms of where they have to sell, because it's a free market economy. You can't really tie people or farmers down to say, just use this system, even if it's beneficial. So sometimes those are the bank linkage issues that are prevalent, whereby the farmer may lose some of his produce because he's trying to make an effort to access another market by him or herself. And in the end, they don't have those facilities. If, let's say, the market turns them away, and that is the time they have to re-strategize to say, oh, let me rush to AMTA, or let me approach another. And then in those processes, you can still see that post-loss harvests prevalent. But government is making quite a lot of effort to support the producers with various facilities, even in the remotest areas, that by the time people harvest, they are able to already store their facilities with those solar powered infrastructure cooling facilities. So there are a lot of things in the pipeline. So we are just playing a part. And I would like to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. And thank you again for your adaptive capacities. You know, and these are some of the human skills that we need, especially when we are in the climate, you know, that is changing. When things change, we need to adapt. And we want to thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we can take your questions. I would like my speakers, you know, Dr. Agombe and Mr. Siyamba to stay tuned with me, because I have a number of questions that are actually emerging. Okay. And I would also want to encourage our panelists as well. If you have comments that you want to make for these presenters, feel free to actually do that. Okay. So let me start with the first. There are two questions that are directed, you know, to Dr. Agombe. The one question is, what are the coping cultural strategies for climate change in the northern Namibia? The second question, which is slightly linked to that, is from Maud, who is joining us from Uganda. Her question is, what type of land tenure systems do you have in Namibia? How relevant it is, you know, for climate change adaptations? Would you want to respond to that?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Director of Ceremony, for the question. I think very, very good questions from also the panels. The first question is talking about what are the cropping cultural strategy for climate change in the northern Namibia. So you see, when we were growing up, for example, our ancestors or our forefathers used to cultivate, and there's a lot of actually cultural strategies that actually indigenous knowledge that we can learn from to adapt to climate change. I know climate change does not only come now, but actually it came it came a long way. But like our forefathers, they use different types of coping strategy to cope with the climate. But of course, like as technology improves, there's what we call now climate smart agriculture technologies that we can able to employ. For example, conservation agriculture, and conservation agriculture has been also been practiced a long time back and so on. But actually, it's just like coming up with those new ways actually how to do farming. Water conservation, for example, with conservation agriculture is how you cultivate your land in such a way that if you receive minimal rainfall, you can able to the plant can able to grow and so on. Diversification and so on. We need to diversify so that we only not actually depend on one source of income and so on. I know, for example, in the northern regions, people are moving away from even, for example, cutting down trees so that they can able to build the houses. But like what they're moving towards more is actually using the bricks to cultivate, or not to cultivate, but to build the houses. But with that, actually, you are adapting. Actually, that's one of the strategy you are adapting so that you can able to survive. Because like also when you are not cutting trees, actually, you are also saving the environment. The second question with regard to the land tenure system. In Namibia, we have two main land tenure systems. The freehold in a declared what we call urban areas and so-called commercial farms, and also the customary tenure on communal land. Of course, like this, the land tenure system, there's also affect, because like, for example, if you don't own the land, you may not be actually obliged actually to protect people. Like you are there only for few number of years and so on. But actually, it's really affecting. But as I say, like those are the two main land tenure system in Namibia, which is like the freehold, and also the customary tenure system. We're actually in the communal area, but of course, like it has bigger effect in terms of climatic change, adaptation, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. There are also two questions that are posed to Alpheus. The one question, it's around the issues of, rural, urban-rural divide. The question here is that AMTA fresh produce hub are located in the urban areas. And, obviously there is urbanization there. But the person here that is in the Yapo, he's also saying that, rural people or the rural areas are also becoming more vulnerable to food insecurities. So what are some of, the access approaches that you are planning for rural Namibians?
Okay, thank you. I just want to emphasize or clarify that, the hubs that are located in the regions, the idea to establish those hubs in those areas came as a result of the concentration of the most farmers. Most producers are concentrated, small-scale producers that were experiencing these post-harvest losses are concentrated in those areas. So they're strategically positioned to serve those predominantly the largest producing areas of the country initially. So, and the mandate or the vision was to also roll out to various regions. But now what you see is that the products that are brought to those hubs, they are collected actually in the rural areas. Most of the productions are in the rural areas. And those are just central strategic points to cater for logistics and support them. Now, the vulnerability of the rural inhabitants in terms of food security might be attributed to other factors. Because if we think about the rural areas, even in Namibia, in most African countries, you find that most of the families are subsistent when it comes to agriculture. They have their production activities around their homelands and stuff like that. But now, when it comes to horticulture, it's a bit sensitive because these are activities that require a lot of skill and training. So there are various channels of food distribution. So usually the projects always cater for those individuals or the rural consumers. And that one is now a developmental objective for the entire country and all the role players to be able to try and bring facilities maybe that can bring trading activities in those communities. But you also need to consider purchasing power. To say, if you have to run these projects, you have to be sustainable somehow. So first you get the establishment right, you build your system, you build a supply and value chain, and once you get it right, then you can move to the next level. And the main issue of urbanization or the migration that is taking place is really the issue of unemployment. But when you see that these projects, if they're functioning well, a lot of employment is also created. So I just wanted to combine those two, but let me again see, the other one is about the South African supermarkets.
Yes.
Dominating. So yeah, that is where I mentioned about the Namibia Agronomic Board coming into play to facilitate those border controls and so forth. But like I said, Namibia is a free market economy, and like many other countries in the region that are dependent on the South African economy in terms of food, in terms of many other services and goods. So, and this is the main objective why AMTA infrastructure was established, to really address those inequalities or that dependency on importation, even though, because those businesses are South African and they have established themselves here, but when you consider there's a scheme called market share promotion. When we started, that scheme was about 5 to 7%, but as we stand, we had gone over 47%. What that tells you is that as the regulation is being implemented, all the importers or the traders that want to import commodities from the other areas are then subjected to first the procurement of local commodities, at least up to 47%, it must be proven. And there are also levies that are put, importation levies that are put on every trader. So in that sense, there's that regulation. But however, to conclude is we also have to put into consideration the coming Africa Free Trade economic partnerships being implemented. Those are the things that will also then open up the whole trading activities where if we don't really build our supply chains and value chain, so we'll be caught off guard everywhere in all the other countries. The ones that are stronger, you know, the situation that we see might continue or might even worsen because there is no more border control. There is no more sufficient time for you to build your infant industries or protect them because it's an agreement that opens everybody for trade. So the only thing we can do is to strengthen our activities locally to become competitive, both locally and in the region or the continent.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I see, you know, the Q&A box has got more questions, but let me move on. And if we have more time, we will go back. But I'll also want to encourage you to go to the Q&A and respond, you know, to some of the questions that are coming. Thank you. And thank you very much to Dr. Agombe and Mr. Siyamba. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to the last, you know, round of, you know, our discussion or our last round of, you know, input perspective. Okay, so we're going to take 3 more short presentations and we'll go to discussions and we'll be going for closure. So this time around, we're going to look at, you know, 3 different perspectives. The first thing is about human capital development and research needs in Namibia. And that will be given by Mr. Genot Pip Meyer, who is the National Commission, from the National Commission of Research, Science and Technology. Secondly, we are going to hear the perspective on promoting inclusivity and needs of smallholder farmers and marketing opportunities. And I think this will also provide a lot of, you know, answers to some of the questions that were raised already. And that will be provided by Mr. Mushoka Banji Mulima, who is the Chief Executive Officer for the Meat Corporation of Namibia. Last but not least, we are going to hear the perspective around the issues of policies that are needed to strengthen food systems interventions. And that is going to be given by Mr. Mulunga, who presented his
We cannot hear.
Ms. Moderator, I think you are muted.
I think, okay, I think I'm muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I think I touched, you know, something here. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen so that, you know, we are faster. So the last perspective, that is on policy issues needed to strengthen food systems intervention in Namibia, will be provided by Mr. Mulunga, who is the Director, Planning and Business Development in the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. Gentlemen, the stage is yours. We're going to start with Mr. Pete Meyer. Mr. Pete Meyer? Mr. Pete Meyer, you are on mute. Mr. Pete Meyer, can you hear me? I think there might be a technical issue there.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, there we go.
Got a struggle to can I share my screen?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
It's not possible. Can you give me permission?
Okay, Francis, can you give Mr. Pete Meyer permission to share the screen?
Yes, he has the permission.
He has the permission.
Yes.
Okay.
You have the permission. Can you try it again?
Look
at the green button at the bottom, and then you click it where the arrow is pointing up.
Where there's a share screen, just click on it. Then you select the presentation.
Are you coming all right?
Now I'm struggling.
Okay.
Are you seeing share screen button?
I'm having now this.
Moderator, we are going to try to share it from this side. Selma is going to try to share it.
That's fine. Thank you. Mr. Pete Meyer, they are sharing.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
Good afternoon. I'm going to also just have my video on, that you have my face before I would switch it off again in order to save some of my bandwidth. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to this presentation. I'm going to look at the perspective of human capital development and research needs in Namibia. I am going to look, can I have the next slide, please? I am going to look at from the STI and research perspective on the objectives for Namibia for the next 10 years. And then I am going to share some proposed programmatic interventions and approaches which we could have in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm going to elaborate on 2 of those suggested or proposed programmatic approaches. If we would look now, the next slide, please look at the current objectives from the strategies for the next 10 years of Namibia. We would see there are 9. Can you go to the previous one, please? Now you are too fast. Can you go to the previous one, please? Previous. The first one would be then to look at improving the policy and legislation and regulatory environment. The next one would be to promote strategic partnership and collaboration. 2 of the ones which came up quite substantially in the previous discussion is to improve scientific and technologically the competencies in the STEM field. improve the gender equity in the mainstreaming of STEM, increase the utilization of science and technical knowledge for societal advancement, and promote a culture of science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And the next three objectives on the next slide are to accelerate research in the areas of technological advancement in the TVET, and to increase scientific productivity and technological output. And last is to improve research and innovation in infrastructure provision. So these are the 9 objectives. From these 9 objectives in the next 10 years, there are proposals for the next 3 to 5 years, the following programmatic interventions or program approaches. And the first one then would be the enabling the policy, legislative and regulatory environment, then the research and innovation infrastructure, research and innovation competencies, the strategic STI Science Technology Innovation Partnership. I think that one came very clear out of a few of the first presentation. Research and innovation for inclusivity. Next one, research and innovation for societal advancement, and research and innovation for manufacturing and industrialization. So these are the proposed programmatic intervention or thrust for the next 3 to 5 years, which previously would also refer to as the program, and these are the proposed areas. In order for this presentation, I would like to look specifically at 2. And the first one I would look like is what here is termed the fifth one, is for research and innovation for inclusivity. Can I have the next slide, please? So the inclusivity is an issue which always be at the heart of the development, and it would require specific programs for the participation and leadership, both participation and leadership for all Namibians in the national and international innovation system. And when we refer to all Namibians, these include particular attention to gender equity, the involvement of the minority groups, the involvement of the vulnerable groups, because these are mostly the most severe and effective areas which need this intervention to partake in the development. Then there's also the suggestion for specific projects for annual calls and proposals, calls for proposals and competitive grants that will be awarded to scientists and especially postgraduate students to undertake mission-oriented research and innovation activities focused on attainment of the first SDGs in Namibia. And these mission-oriented research should put emphasis on the placing and supporting of multidisciplinary scientific research that explores the interrelatedness of the SDGs, with emphasis on food health, water health, energy, climate change, energy, water, food, conservation, and circular economy. So it's not a matter of then honing on one specific area. the focus should be on the interrelatedness and multidisciplinary research in order to have all factors involved to address a particular challenge. Next one, please. In addition, technology prospecting project should be supported through the much called public-private partnership to identify to identify and produce and demonstrate promising technologies for food production, water management, sanitation, renewable energy, sustainable mining and fishing, just to mention some. I think the previous presentation have highlighted many more. This will include, just you to fast one back, please. This will include the increased national participation in the United Nations technology mechanism created under Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. And going back again to the technologies here, just to mention one, we have seen big machines and in industry and motorization on something like maize planting and harvesting. But in Namibia, I have not seen a single technology already in the harvesting of millet or mahango. So that would be some of the areas to look at. Then the next slide, in terms of our competencies in research and innovation, and that includes our technology and all the sciences. And I mean, again, all the sciences. So there should be specific thrust to invest in postgraduate and postdoctoral programs in those identified areas. We should also establish these postdoctoral fellowship in key research fields. And again, it should be mentioned that those key research fields should be multidisciplinary, and it should not be reduced to one specific section. And then fund the postgraduate training programs in STEM. And again, they should also again and again be emphasized the inclusivity and the equity of all Namibians in that area. Then you should also have that program to establish the annual joint calls for applied research, that we would have a constant drive towards also have the right ratio between applied research and the mainstream research. The next one is also something which is quite important, is the training of our Namibian researchers and the technicians and the legal practitioners, entrepreneurs in the management and use of IP, intellectual property rights, technology transfer and ethics. Then strengthening our existing institution and initiatives through the provision of adequate resources. And I think the last one is something which is probably the biggest drive. We have currently researchers in Namibia, but from previous surveys, it has established that the full-time equivalent of those researchers is relatively low, that researchers spend more time in the classroom teaching than being free to actually do research. So there should be some programmatic drive towards establishing a national scheme for full-time equivalent researchers who will receive their annual grants or stipends for collaboration research program in order to increase their time doing research and reducing their time doing teaching. So in short, those are the recommendation in terms of the proposed projects and programmatic strides towards increasing the competencies of research in the STI field. Thank you.
Thank you, vielen Dank, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, go to the Q&A. We will have, dedicated time to look at that. Now we are going straight to our next presenter. That is gonna be Mr. Mwilima. That is the Chief Executive Officer from Meat Corporation of Namibia, where he's going to talk about inclusivity and addressing the needs of smallholder farmers and harnessing marketing opportunities. Over to you, sir. Mr. Mlima? Okay. I'm not sure if he's here. Okay, just give me an indication. Okay, let me move to the next one, which is on the perspective on policy issues needed to strengthen food systems intervention in Namibia. That is Mr. Mulunga.
Okay,
Mr. Mulunga?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I share the document? How do I
Yes.
do that? I go to share,
please.
then?
Yes, you go to share, and then when you press it, then you will be able to see the document that you want to share. At the moment, I see your entire screen. So you just click on the document that you want to share. If it's a PowerPoint, you just click on that PowerPoint.
Okay, let me just go to
Is it a document or is it a PowerPoint?
It's a PowerPoint.
Yes. So what I would suggest is that you open, maybe stop sharing now. Oh, okay. That is the one.
Yes.
Is that the one? Yes. Just click on it. Okay. There we go. And then you go to this, the show.
Slideshow.
The slideshow.
Yes, I'll go to slideshow.
Yes. There we go.
Now, how do I mean?
Yes, that's fine. You have to, is that the first slide? The challenges?
No.
Okay. So okay. So you have to go to the first slide and then you click the slideshow from there.
Okay.
There. Thank you.
I then just needed to. Okay. I don't know. This screen is now telling. Okay.
Okay. No, the screen we can. No, that's go ahead.
Okay.
We can see your presentation.
Yes. Thank you very much. I must just say that, yeah, I was asked on short notice to present, but it's not an excuse. I have prepared the presentation and I should be able to take you through. And I hope it answers the topic, perspective on policy issues needed to strengthen food system interventions in Namibia. But the approach I've taken is that I have taken an approach of basically presenting on the Namibian policy space or policy framework, so that it can serve as a basis to provide understanding on what is there and identifying what could be the possible gaps. Now, the slides, it's not moving. Okay. So that is my presentation outline. Am I on mute? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. No, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Let me just go back to the presentation outline. So I'll basically just briefly run through the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, mandate, mission, and vision. Talk about the functions of the ministry, and then give you the national policy environment and legal framework, sectoral policies and acts that we have for those three policies. For those three sectors: agriculture, water, and land reform. That one, ministerial strategy plan, that one I took it out. It's going to make the presentation lengthy, so I'll just talk about who are the key stakeholders in the formulation of those policies and acts, because we have a framework in place on policy making as well as law making, which dictates that we have to necessarily consult all our stakeholders. And then I'll go to the challenges in terms of implementation of policies and laws, which then could also, if the conclusion is that we have a good policy and legal framework in place, the question would then be the gap that was identified by Dr. Hemberger. Why is it that we are not food self-sufficient? Why is it that we are not meeting all our targets, etc.? And those can actually be found in some of the challenges that I'm going to point out. Okay. Now, in short, in brief, the ministry's mandate it has to change. It's not forestry anymore. It's Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. So the F has to be changed to LR. So the ministry is mandated to promote, develop, manage and utilize agriculture, water and land resources sustainably. And then we also have an additional function or mandate over cooperative development and regulation. The mission is to create an enabling environment and develop strategies, programs and projects that are aimed at enhancing food and nutrition security and improving the livelihoods of Namibians. The vision is for the ministry to be recognized as a contributor to food and nutrition security, equitable access to agriculture, water and land resources, and enhance livelihoods. And I think if one looks at that, the ministry is actually at the center stage of coordinating and making sure that the three sectors, including agriculture, are promoted and that there is sustainable development and we address all the challenges that need to be addressed by the ministry is, as you can see in the first bullet there. Oh, my internet is unsustainable. Maybe I'm running out of data, I don't know.
But we can hear you clearly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just, okay. If I'm thrown out, I'll have to just reload. But anyway, we initiate and review all sectoral policies, that is policies in the agriculture, water and land reform sectors, as well as legislation. As we the law follows policy. Policies are set, and from the policy framework, then the laws or the various legislation are developed. So now these functions that follow there basically denote the organization of the ministry, and those are the directorates that we have in the ministry. One responsible for planning and business development, the one that I'm heading. Then you have others responsible for agricultural development, extension and engineering services, research and development, under which you now have conservation of genetic material, plant health, and biosecurity services, that is under the other Directorate of Agriculture Development. And then veterinary services, laboratory services, both for water and animals, CVL, Central Veterinary Laboratory. And then we have another one for water. Conformity inspection services, those are services provided by the directorates responsible for plant health and also animal health. Rural water supply and sanitation coordination, that's another function resulting in one directorate. Water resource management, another directorate there. Bulk water infrastructure development, also falling under the directorate responsible for rural water supply and sanitation coordination. Land reform management and cooperative development and regulation. And then in terms of the national policy and legal framework, we always would like to start with the supreme law of the country, specifically Article 95 of the Namibian Constitution, that sub-article 1 that advocates for the maintenance of ecosystems, biological diversity of Namibia, and the utilization of living natural resources on a sustainable basis for the benefit of all Namibians, present and future generations. So that is the starting point for us. And then Vision 2030, which envisages a prosperous and industrialized Namibia by 2030, which is developed by human resources enjoying peace, harmony, and political stability. That is the vision from which all policies are actually derived from. Now, in order to achieve the vision, we have implemented a series of national development plans, and which are 5-year development plans. At the moment, we are at the end of NDP 5, National Development Plan 5, which started in financial year 2017-18, and it's now ending in the financial, it's going to end in the financial year 2021-2022. Now, under this particular NDP 5, we have 2 relevant pillars, 1 and 2, which speaks to economic progression and social transformation. And agriculture desired outcomes under this plan is the promotion of food insecure, the proportion of food insecure individuals should drop from 25%, which was the base figure in 2016, to 12% by 2022, and food production must also increase by 30% cumulatively over the NDP period that was just described earlier. And then we have all those targets on water and sanitation infrastructure. As we said, food system is not just food, it includes even water, access to water for consumption and for production and livestock consumption as well. So those are the figures. I wouldn't go to all individual targets, but as this is going to be shared. Okay, and in addition to the National Development Plan, we also that was developed by the current administration, the President's own initiative, the Harambee Prosperity Plan 2016 to 2020, but we now have a second version of it. And it complements the National Development Plan and Vision 2030. Now, under the one that was just implemented, and there was a report on it basically indicating that we have actually kind of been successful in implementing and reaching targets thereunder. So you had a third pillar on social progression, which also spoke to ending hunger and poverty. And the desired outcome there was that there will be 0 deaths in Namibia that could be attributed to lack of food. And that one was achieved over the Harambee Prosperity Plan period. And the fourth pillar there dealt with infrastructure development, and the relevant one for this ministry was the one on water infrastructure. That is to increase access to water for human consumption that is safe, potable, from 50% to 100% of the population by 2020. And then ensure that there are sufficient water reserves for industrialization, land servicing, and housing development purposes. The ministry went a step further to develop another program called the Harambee Comprehensively Coordinated and Integrated Development Program, under which we envisage to strengthen coordination and integration, vertical and lateral, between all stakeholders in the agriculture, water and land reform sectors, to maximize synergies and strengthen public-private partnership linkages. So part of the strategy was also to use government purchasing power in order to stimulate agriculture development. And inclusiveness, as was indicated, that nobody should be left behind, both in terms of planning, policy planning, and implementation. So cooperation, collaboration, and integration are seen as very important themes in this whole of government approach. And then we have multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary approaches approach, where we said, where it is also envisaged that food systems is not just about one sector operating in as a silo, but there is need for integration in planning and cooperation and collaboration. Especially when one talks about theme areas such as food safety, nutrition, etc. So necessarily stakeholders such as Ministry of Health, Ministry of Industrialization, and other agencies such as Namibia Standards Institution, etc., would have to play a very important role, and also the consumers at the down the downstream, the value chains. And now, okay, and yeah, work for reward, reward for work is another concept that is also introduced through this program, where able-bodied Namibians are encouraged to also provide their labor to be rewarded as part of the approach. Okay. Now, the HACIADEP, or Harambee Comprehensively Coordinated Integrated Development Program, has identified 10 schemes, which are basically schemes aimed at developing the various value chains in the agriculture sector. But also, you also have that first one, flood water irrigation and infrastructure development scheme, which looks at ways of how to harvest flood water for irrigation purposes and also for ecotourism purposes, which otherwise goes to, it causes, what is it? It causes damage if it is not properly managed, but if and also it gets to be lost through evaporation. But with this kind of scheme, if the activities under this scheme are implemented, we are envisaging a situation where this flood water can actually be properly managed, harvested, and it can be used during drought periods for irrigation purposes and also for ecotourism. Then you have the NCA Beef Value Chain Development Scheme. That one is also currently being supported under the European Development Fund 11 funds that we have gotten through our international cooperating partner, the EU, complementing the ongoing efforts of the ministry, or those efforts that the ministry has already implemented. And then we have the Small Stock Value Chain Development Scheme for small and medium scale agricultural producers and agro-processors in Southern region. Agricultural Mechanization Scheme. This one is, you'll notice, is in bold, and then the Seed System Development Scheme is in bold, because we have basically gotten funding through a loan by the African Development Bank, which is supporting this implementation of those two particular schemes, agricultural mechanization, and then the seeds systems development. Then we have others identified under the HACIADEP, under other programs: horticulture value chain development scheme, cereal value chain development scheme, poultry value chain development scheme, dairy value chain development scheme, and then debushing or bush value chain development scheme. Okay, so those are the programs, initiatives, and the policy framework. Those are the various policies that we have that speak to the agriculture sector and agriculture, water, and land sector. They are not exhaustive. I've just put them here for demonstration purposes. The Namibia Agriculture Policy 2015, Green Scheme Policy, Namibia Seed Policy, Namibia Food Safety Policy, Marketing and Trade Policy and Strategy, National Rangeland Management Policy and Strategy, National Drought Policy. That one is under review. We are actually at in the final stages of reviewing it, and it's going to be launched very soon. And then we have policy on the eradication of transboundary animal diseases, Namibia Cooperative Policy, National Water Policy, or White Paper on the National Water Policy, and Water Supply and Sanitation Policy, National Sanitation Strategy. Then we also have a community-based management strategy, which is under review. So I'm really just putting up these policies to indicate that, yes, there are actually, there is ample policy created to deal with issues of food systems, but we'll also talk about coordination later in terms of what is it that we can do to maximize the impact of this policy and also attain the policy objectives. Now, emanating from those policies, we have a number of laws and regulations to implement some of these pieces of legislation. We have the Namibia Agronomic Industry Act, Meat Industry Act. So these are the acts that provide the legal framework for economic activity in the agronomic and meat industries. And then we have a Meat Corporation Act that establishes Meatco, which is the single biggest trading entity in terms of exports of beef in Namibia. Mm-hmm. And then we have the Meat Company of Namibia Bill. No, this one, maybe I should just take it out. There was a there was an attempt to actually amend or actually repeal the Meat Cooperation of Act, but this initiative is still just there. Maybe I shouldn't really mention it here. And then we have...
And Mr. Mlunga, let me disturb you a little bit.
Yes.
I would like you to wrap up so that we still have more time to take Mr. Mulima.
Okay, very good.
So
really, those were just the various laws that we have. You can have a look at them. And for the ministry, in terms of stakeholders, we value stakeholders, and we are in constant. In fact, all our laws, all our policies are done within the framework of consultation, because there is a national framework of policy making in the country, and part of a key pillar in that whole framework of policy making is consultation with stakeholders. So we have all these important stakeholders, government offices, ministries and agencies, financial institutions, regulatory boards, producer organizations, traders, academic and research institutions, international cooperating partners. We have mentioned AFDB that has funded some of our, HACIADEP schemes, GIZ, which is helping. It has also helped with the establishment of the Agriculture Trade Policy Institute at NAST recently. And then we have traditional authorities, land boards, and local authorities as also key partners. We have some consultative forums that are established. Meat Board of Namibia has various specialized committees where all stakeholders are brought together to deliberate on policy issues related to the meat industry. As a regulatory body, NAB, same, they also have various committees. And then we have on trade and marketing a forum that falls not under this ministry, but under the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and SME Development, which is the National Trade Forum. And this forum also has various committees, I think one on fisheries, one on market access, one on agriculture, and another one on services. So those are consultative platforms that are there. As to whether they are active, that is a question, but at least for agriculture, we have another forum, which is the Agriculture Trade Forum, but more specifically looking at commercial agriculture trade issues. The key challenges that we experience in terms of implementing all these policies and laws that I've mentioned there has to do with the rainfall. And I think Dr. Hemberger has referred to this, not really as an excuse. It is really true that Namibia experiences erratic rainfall, which leads to either droughts or flood conditions. We have outbreaks of animal diseases, FMD specifically, and CBPP in the northern communal areas, and that affects their access to lucrative export markets. Outbreaks of plant pests, diseases. So all of those challenges that you see mentioned there, really, just to wrap up. Production inputs, I should also mention, very, very expensive, and that makes our cost of production generally in the country to be higher than not only our neighbors, but just globally. So we are not really well endowed when it comes to production inputs. And we know that the soils in Namibia are not the best. We have very poor soils, and we have to constantly improve the soils there, and that costs a lot of money, and it is not produced locally. Yes, and the water that we have, the readily available water that we have is shared at the borders, so with riparian states, and you can't really do what you want with this water at any given point in time. It has to be managed in collaboration with the riparian states. I think that is what I can say. And in conclusion, I should really just say that yes, indeed, we may have this policy framework, but it is a challenge to meet all the targets, and there is space, there is scope for improving the coordination with stakeholders to make sure that we have an integrated approach in terms of both planning and implementation of programs and projects, and that there is no duplication, and that we can maximize efficiency, optimize results. And I think that is all that I had for now. And I thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are taking one last presentation just to understand the perspective on promoting inclusivity and addressing the needs of smallholder farmers and marketing opportunities. And that will be done by Mr. Mulima in 10 minutes. Mr. Mulima, over to you. Mr. Mulima, can you hear me? You must be on mute.
Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It's a marathon. Okay. You have 10 minutes to go. Yes, thank you so much. Mm-hmm.
I'll make sure that I'm done within 10 minutes.
Thank you.
I'll just highlight the key issues when it comes back to mainstreaming smallholder farmers into the agricultural sector, and just some cardinal issues that we should be looking at. I think to start with, I would want to outline that agriculture remains the backbone of the African economy, of the Namibian economy, all over the world.
Just hold on. I would like to remove the presentation that is here. It's not yours, right?
Yes, I'm not going to do a presentation. I'll just highlight the key pointers to you. I don't need to do it properly.
Yeah, Mr. Mlunga, may you please stop sharing the screen? You just go to that share button, you click it, it will tell you to stop sharing the screen. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. We all know that a myriad of empirical evidence has proven that the world population right now is at 7.5 billion. By 2050, it could have bulged at around 10.5 billion. The extra 2.5 billion, they will actually be residents of the developing world, mostly Asia and Africa. So due to climate change, the intensity of disease outbreak and so forth, you have a situation whereby a number of mouths to feed is increasing, but there will be a decline in terms of food production. Regardless of this, smallholder farmers play a critical role. I mean, they contribute more than 70% to food and nutritional security. We live in a century in which, unlike in the 16th century where production pulled marketing, marketing pulls production. So it has become very important to make sure that the smallholder farmers, of which most of them are rural dwellers, we need to make sure that a conducive, enabling environment is created for them so that we are able to bring them into the mainstream, not only in creating domestic markets, but in creating the regional, the African, and the global markets. Like in the context of Namibia, we are trying to make sure that we mainstream smallholder farmers across the value chain, especially in the livestock sector, mainstreaming the northern of the communal areas, mainstreaming communal south to make sure that they remain a critical.
I've lost you. Mr. Mudi.
So that their product in primary is very critical. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Loud and clear.
So
yes.
Policy inclusivity is very critical. You must have seen what the Namibian government have done of recent. If you look at the Public Procurement Act,
I don't know whether
it's actually given preferential treatment to make sure that they are able cutting. Hello?
You are breaking.
I'm busy breaking. I think it was because of the calls that were coming in earlier on.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead.
But just to sum up, that is that the Namibian government have put on legislation in place, especially the Public Procurement Act. It has created enablement in the country to make sure that domestically farmers are able to have access to market through MeatCo, in the livestock industry, through the meat board. I mean, through in the agriculture, in the agronomic industry, through AMTA. So it has made it much more easier to make sure that we easily mainstream them. But in mainstreaming smallholder farmers to access markets, critical is to make sure that we make serious investments in research and development. That's very, very important. And then from there to make sure that we also provide timely agricultural extension and advisory services. That will help farmers to make sure that they're able to produce good quality products. That's very, very important. But it is also critical to make sure that we build a food systems approach whereby you have got organized farmers, organized agriculture that is commodified, because it is only through organized agriculture. We have seen that in Europe, we have seen that in Asia, that wherever you have got organized farmers that can bargain with one voice, they are actually able to negotiate for a better price. So organized agriculture is very cardinal. It informs, it influences policy. It helps out to make sure that we are able to basically mainstream the smallholder farmers who can speak for themselves, and it's actually also building up strong institutions at communal level. So we have seen this in Kenya. It has worked out very well. We have seen this in Mozambique. Another policy issue I was going to bring out is the whole issue of Maputo Declaration in mainstreaming smallholder farmers, especially to make sure that out of our national budget, 10% really needs to go into agriculture, because without that, it becomes difficult to provide a public good. Like, for example, the provision of veterinary services, the provision of agriculture extension services. When these public goods are compromised, it becomes very challenging to make sure that we mainstream the smallholder farmers into the economy. When you look at countries like Zambia that have built up some of the most strongest cooperatives through smallholder farmers, they have done very well. The Zambian economy in agriculture is basically held out together by communal farmers. So I think for me, in a nutshell, we need to make sure that we provide smallholder farmers with a conducive policy environment. Research and innovation is very critical. We need to make sure that we beef up these dynamic capabilities to bring in the farmers on board. And there's nothing that can bring smallholder farmers into the mainstream of the economy than a policy enablement. And I think Ms. Mlunga mentioned some of those policy enablement, but I think focus has to be more towards execution. So you gave me 10 minutes. I don't want to mess up with the time. Those were the critical issues I thought we need to make sure that we address if we were to make sure that we mainstream farmers into the mainstream of the economy.
Thank you so much for sticking to that. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at the Q&A. I only see one question. I think it was a legacy question. Somebody was asking about how much research on climate smart agriculture is being done by the Ministry of Agriculture in Namibia. So this question has nothing to do with you. Probably we could actually take it from any of the speakers who want to respond to that, while I call upon Dr. Florence Nakayiwa, who's going to give us the summary of the discussions and some of the emerging recommendations for consideration After her, she also has 10 minutes to do that. Then we'll be getting the closing remarks by Dr. Lisho Mundia. Okay, Dr. Florence, while you are preparing to take the stage, I will ask, who should I ask? Probably, should I say, yeah, anyone? Probably Nhlanhla, maybe? Oh, no, maybe Dr. Agom, yes, because he was talking about the climate smart, the climate change and all that. Yes, I think Dr. Agomba will be able to respond to this question. How much of climate smart agriculture is being, research is being done in Namibia? Florence, you can take the stage.
Yes, thank you. Probably maybe I may not able to quantify how much, but there is actually research on climate smart agriculture. The University of Namibia, for example, we are doing research on climate smart agriculture through the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Forestry, through the project called CRAVE project. I know also the Ministry of Agriculture, they've been involved in the project in climate smart agriculture. So there are quite actually substantial number of research on climate smart agriculture, headed both by the Ministry of Agriculture and also the University of Namibia.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to make sure that we have covered all the questions that were raised. Dr. Florence, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lami. I'll just briefly put on my video and then switch it off to enable me conserve some bandwidth for the presentation. Thank you very much for this discussion. And this is what I captured as a listening ear from outside of Namibia. The program overview as given to us by Lami, and this is what I'm going to follow in terms of the capturing of the summary issues that emerged from the presentations. We did have an overview from Professor Adipala Ekwam, who is the Executive Secretary of ReForum, that introduced ReForum as a network of 129 universities founded in 2004 by vice chancellors, but it also gave us the footprint of ReForum in Namibia. He did articulate thoughts for future partnership with Namibia and some expectations, as it were. We received from Professor Adipala Food Systems Summit framework and rationale, and why we are having this dialogue today, and the different dialogues that exist within this food systems framework. But we also saw the expectations from the Namibia dialogue and other dialogues that Namibia is participating in. So delving in quickly, Mr. Mulunga, representing the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, who opened the session, did inform us that Namibia already has a technical task team to facilitate dialogues and engagement in the UN Food Systems Summit, and we commend you for that. But he also articulated that we cannot afford to let the food systems to fail. If we did that, then we wouldn't be progressing anyhow. So Namibian stakeholders have to take stock of the fragile food systems. We need to come up with ideas in this dialogue for transforming the food systems, and that food systems affect all facets of life, and including poverty. And therefore there is need for food sustainability. In this dialogue and other dialogues, we need to bring together key stakeholders towards a harmonized action plan for the Namibian food system. That was the opening remark from the ministry. Dr. Hamburger gave us a very intriguing presentation that looked at both the food systems and also the general framework of the United Nations Food Systems Summit, which are the action tracks, the 5 action tracks. And he did present a view that these action tracks actually do not define the food systems concept, but we must look at the food systems as a comprehensive aspect, as a system. It is systemic, which approaches food access challenges and food insecurity, which talks about food safety and food security for sustainable development, as well as target a free all populations in Namibia from hunger. He did articulate the One Health concept. She did articulate the One Health concept and the inter-academic partnership to address key issues of food security. And she really told us that we have to do business not as usual. We need to do things the way we do things, not to change what we do, but how do we do it? Can we target social innovation, awareness, as well as educate, advise, and train? She brought out priority actions, informing us that issues are interlinked and we need to see things from a systemic perspective. Research and innovation has a key role to play, but this has to be undertaken differently. And she brought out 7 priority areas of focus, including human capital development and good governance. We did receive the Namibian STI ecosystem from that name that I cannot pronounce, Mr. Lupala, and he brought out the policy framework for institutions that implement STI policies and initiatives do exist in Namibia. And there are several players, including the informal sector, who should play an active role in food systems with a focus on research and development. He articulated the strength, the weaknesses, and the challenges of the National Innovation System, which includes the monitoring and evaluation of STEM indicators, data, and the need for human capacity development, as well as strategic partnerships and indigenous knowledge systems. That was from that perspective. Then we brought it home to perspectives from different entities. Dr. Angome gave us the perspective of climate change and environmental degradation and articulated that global warming has an impact on Namibia, including stressed water sector and a fragile agricultural sector. Those it will impact, and therefore there is need for adaptive and transformative response in the Namibian ecosystem, as it were. We also received a post-harvest and management framework from Dr. Siamba, who shared the AMTA experience, which is quite commendable, and the establishment of food management hubs and market access systems. We learned from the post-harvest perspective that 20% of the production is lost, and there is a convergence of players for market protection, value addition, and food safety, both in the rural and the urban areas. And that Namibia has moved forward to establish strategic food reserves for security. Going forward, we also received perspectives from the human capital development. Dr. Janot brought out that there is a programmatic approach which is underpinned by multidisciplinary missions that are oriented towards the sustainable development goals, research, science, technology, and innovation. He talked about the public-private partnership for promoting human capital development and capacity building with a focus on STEM, graduate study, research, competences, as has been adopted by the Namibian government. We also have seen the policy issues that are needed to strengthen food systems in Namibia from Mr. Mulunga, who told us that policy and legislation exists in Namibia, but it is a transdisciplinary nature of a transdisciplinary nature. There is a national policy framework, such as the National Development Plan and the Harambe, which is focusing on economic progression and social transformation. But these policies are consultative in nature, and formulating is deliberately consultative through partnerships, but he also articulated the different challenges that exist in that policy environment, especially how the policies that have been formulated can be implemented and monitored and evaluated. We finally looked at inclusivity for smallholder farmers by Mr. Mwilima, who clearly articulated that an enabling environment for smallholder farmers to feed the growing population is quite necessary if we are to advance. And for that to work, we need investment in research and development. Issues such as timely agricultural extension services will ensure that smallholders have access to adequate resources to facilitate their productive processes, and then a food systems approach with organized agriculture to influence policy has worked elsewhere, and it will work well in Namibia as well. And there is need to build strong institutions to support smallholder farmers, as well as compliance to the continental frameworks such as CADIP and Maputo Declaration, which are looking at how much resources we are allocating to agriculture. Thank you very much, moderator. That is what I captured as the summary for this dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm always amazed about how fast, you are capturing these and, putting up a PowerPoint presentation. This is very, very impressive. Ladies and gentlemen, we are 10 minutes to landing, and I'm very excited about it. We are going to call upon, Dr. Lisho Mundia, who is the Director Innovation in the Ministry of Higher Education, Technology and Innovation in Namibia, to give us, the closing remarks. Dr. Lisho, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Director of Ceremony. I hope I'm clear enough.
Loud and clear.
Thank you, Dr. Ongwenya. Let me also recognize, I hope he's here or in absentia, Mr. Percy Misika, the Executive Director of the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. In the same vein, Professor Dipala Ikwamu, the ReForum Executive Secretary, and of course, distinguished presenters, participants, academics, senior officials from both government, public and private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to you. I should say it's my pleasure to deliver these closing remarks on behalf of the Ministry of Higher Education, Technology and Innovation in that of the Republic of Namibia. The convening of the just concluded pre-UN Food System National Dialogue, it is actually my understanding that this part of the series of activity builds up to the upcoming 2021 UN Food System Summit, which is to take place in October 2021, under the theme, Transforming Food System is Crucial for Delivering All the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we have examined the state of our
food systems and how they are impacted by our policy framework. The discussions today points out to the need to continue sharing best practices on underlying issues affecting food systems in our respective countries in Africa. There is also an urgent need to provide the countries with evidence-based policy guidance to address the short, medium, and of course, long-term impacts of COVID-19 on food systems and agriculture value chains. That we call the development of sustainable food value chains, provide evidence in which it can offer important pathways out of poverty for the million of poor households in developing countries. Director of Ceremony, the global food value chains often represent an option for farmers in developing countries to get access to high value markets and of course, new technologies. Whereas the potential benefits from global value chains for medium income developing countries are well documented, the studies dealing with impacts on low income countries are scarce. We should therefore, as a country and as a continent, welcome the role played by ReForum in building capacity in agriculture through collaboration with universities throughout the 5 geographical regions of Africa, that of Central, East, Southern, North, and West Africa. Through you, Professor Adipala Kwanu, the ReForum Executive Secretary, let me once again express our profound gratitude for this invaluable platform. I know you and your team have done quite a number of these activities, and it's really a great honor again that we again conclude the pre-summit, which we know that the actual summit will be a success. Again, in the same vein, I congratulate the ReForum Secretariat for organizing this pre-UN food system dialogue for Namibia. Let me also thank all our participants, our presenters, senior officials from both government, public sector, and the private sector for the virtual technical inputs to today's deliberation. I call upon all the players in our national innovation system or ecosystems to promote the strengthening of our human capital across the broad agricultural value chain. This is in order to develop the required research capacity to strengthen our food system and respond to more effective or emerging challenges and opportunities, especially those relating to climate change, vulnerability, and declining environmental health. Director of Ceremony, I trust that the outcome of our deliberations today will pave the best way possible towards the accomplishment of the objective of the United Nations Food System Summit. With these few words and remarks, I would want to thank you all for your participation and declare this pre-UN Food System National Dialogue for Namibia concluded. I thank you.
Thank you so much. After you declaring this meeting concluded, there is nothing more that we can say except to say, thank you also to all our speakers, but also a meeting like this will not be successful without the participation. I can see the chat box, people are very, very impressed about, the organization, the speakers, and everything. Thank you, and Kanimamba from South Africa.